Good morning. I'm joined by Ian White, CEO of Crux Careers. Hi, Ian. How are you doing?
Yeah, good morning, David. Hi, very well. And yourself, thanks?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Good, good.
We've just had a very honest and frank chat about the state of the union of the property industry at the moment. One of the biggest challenges, I suppose, over the last year as a whole, has been around recruitment and careers because the industry as a whole has had a very productive year. And there's been a lot of commissions going through different pipelines, and people have been very hesitant about leaving jobs and moving jobs. Do you see this as a sort of a seminal moment now in sort of the recruitment industry?
Not so much the recruitment industry. I think it's a seminal moment in how estate agents need to go about attracting, because this problem doesn't exist in necessarily other industries. The estate agency sector is fairly unique in the fact that we've had this boom period that's created lots of stress and problems on the workforce. You've obviously we've had the pandemic where people have been off ill. We've had the pandemic where people have had to isolate. We've had the work from home. We've had the lockdowns and everything else. And agencies have had to come through all of that at a time where key players who may or may not have been on the market to move are earning so much money or have got such big pipelines, the desire to move may be waned, or because they've been earning such good money, they're now in a financial position to make different decisions, whether that be travel, start up on their own, look at the self-employed models. So the poor old traditional guys in the middle seem to be being squeezed in every aspect, really. So, but I think the seminal moment is how do agencies respond to that to make themselves an attractive employer again? The bit that we're actually going through at the moment in terms of, let's call it a lack of candidates, I think that's just a window in time. I don't think that's necessarily, that'll be cyclical. There are lots of other industries that are suffering and those people will retrain and they'll provide some good opportunity. In fact, if anything, some of the best recruits we've had for our clients have been outside of the industry.
It's interesting that. Do you think our industry is now seen as more attractive to people that had previously sort of overlooked a career in estate agency?
I don't know whether it's more attractive, really. I just think it's more accessible because as people have got vacancies they can't fill, they're more likely to expand their horizons about, we have clients that are absolutely adamant they must be experienced because they don't want to do the training, they don't have the facility, they must be experienced agents. Well, that's fine, but that's quite a slim pool of, that's slim pickings. Others are actually very categoric that they want anything but experienced people. They want people from outside of the industry because their perspective is they'd rather train them in their systems and processes, their mindsets. And as long as they come with transferable skills, they'll bring in a fresh gene pool of thoughts and ideas into the industry because they'll say, well, this is how we deal with customer service, blah, blah, blah. So, and then you've got the people in the middle, it'll be an either or just depending on the candidate at the time. But it's very, very different. And I can't, I don't think either policy is right or wrong. I think what's right or wrong is the leader of the business in the first place and what they do when the person comes in.
Yeah.
And that really is.
That makes all the difference, really, doesn't it? In how engaged that person then becomes within the business and whether they grow from in that position. So just looking at the background of Crux, perhaps just give us, for those that don't know, a bit of a potted history of where, your history until this point and what your plans are for the future.
Well, look, Crux was initially formed from my client base, some of whom are investors. They are part owners in Crux, where they were perhaps dissatisfied with the traditional recruitment model where, a recruiter would use a job board or whatever it was they would to find a candidate. They'd send the candidate in pretty much unfiltered. Somebody at HQ had to filter through the CVs, see 10 people to employ one of them. And at the same time, the same recruiters were pinching staff in the background and all those sorts of things. So we created it from the estate agent's perspective. So some of the behaviours, we've eradicated. We've made them. They're just not part of our DNA. They're contractually written. written within our terms that, you know, if these things happen, there is a compensationary measure that we'll immediately pay out on and would pay out on if it happened. We accept human nature's human nature. Somebody will err at some point.
Yep.
Touch wood, that hasn't happened yet, but if it does, I would pay out with almost happily, you know, because it would prove the point that we are and I am serious about dealing with people properly and not pinching their staff or putting people in and then tapping them up after the rebate period. So all of those things. So that's how we came about, but it was to serve a very small number of agents that were actually partners, and instead of their money going out to other recruiters, they were going to feed their own company.
Yeah.
But of course, we're a very incestuous business, as you know, David. Everybody knows everybody, and you know, more and more people started to say, "Well, look, would you work with us? Can you help us find candidates?" Et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, we decided after about 4 or 5 months of trading, let's turn this into a full commercial entity. And we recruited some more people into the business. We expanded, if you like, and now we are an open for business recruiter, but with a very, very different twist in both the charging options and the way we think about it. So we are not just a recruitment business. We're what we call a full circle people business. So we provide services and consultancy to avoid the vacancy in the first place. So our first objective is to make our recruitment side redundant by making sure that the leadership, the culture, systems and processes, the reward and pay, you know, the monitoring and feedback to these people, we can provide all of that stuff to try and minimize leavers. If in the event there is a leaver, we have a rescue service that says, well, look, let's see if we can rescue the resignation for you and make it irrelevant. We have the recruitment piece that says, okay, there's now a vacancy. Let's now go to the market and find somebody. We have a training and development thing. So Agency Mentors is a brand you might be aware of. That's now merged with Crux.
Okay.
So it's now in effect Crux.
Well, I was going to ask you, because that very unique take on people trying to leave or people being unhappy within a role, and you trying to sort of change the mindset perhaps of the management and also provide that support around that person leaving. To me, that's where Agency Mentors always had somebody that could advise on that. So it seems like a very happy marriage, that.
Yeah, it became very logical that there was no point in having two brands, two sets of marketing costs, two sets of most of the shareholders were the same in both businesses because they were evolved for the same reasons from the same client base. Yeah. So yes, so Agency Mentors in theory is no more, but Crux has taken up the mantle of that piece. So you've got at the front end is let's avoid the vacancy and make sure everything's sweet and light in the business. Then you've got, okay, if worse comes to the worst, we have to recruit. Then you've got the piece that says, right, once we've got the people that either we've got or we've recruited, let's train, develop, and mentor them to be able to perform to the best possible ability they've got. Mindset training, technical training. We don't do compliance. You know, that's the one bit we don't touch. And then at the end of that, you've got, okay, well, if in order to run a happy ship and everything else, or if there's a problem, we have a HR subscription model with 3 different tiered levels where smaller businesses that can't afford their own HR resource, similar to some of the things like you've seen with Peninsula, we have a HR resource that gives them a library of all of the documents they're going to need, the processes they need to follow, expert access to absolute HR experts who can avoid court hearings, deal with settlements, make sure you follow the right processes, and depending on the size of your business, that you know there's subscription models that give you access to really in effect your own outsourced HR resource at a very low cost. The big difference on that particular HR one is that there's no contracts. We don't have self-renewal on our contracts. Again, it was sort of brought around at the request of our clients. They've been too used to signing up with one company that wanted you to sign for 3 or 4 years. And at the end of those 3 or 4 years, if you didn't pick up the phone, and who would? Because HR goes out the window unless you've got a problem.
Yep.
The contract self-renews for another 3 or 4 years, which we've since discovered is very difficult to legally, typically they'll back down. But anyway, so that's starting to pick up pace. That's quite new. So for us, it's a sort of circle piece around, well, let's get the environment right to avoid the vacancy. If we have to bring people in, great. Let's use proper filtered, good business to business ethics around how you do business with people on a recruitment side of things. we've then got the training, development, mentoring people to create peak performance, and that's also part of the retention as well. And then you've got the HR piece that people can subscribe to.
So am I right in saying, Ian, that this is not just for people who wish to find roles in a state agency? This can also be for people involved in the industry as a whole, so prop tech suppliers as well. You're placing those sort of job roles as well.
Yeah, the recruitment side deals with estate agents, suppliers to estate agents, and mortgage brokers. Those are the three areas where we have expertise. And when it's the prop tech businesses, the recruitment we do for them is focused on selling and account management. We don't do the technical IT guy, the coder. Yeah. We don't do any of that yet. I don't think we ever will, to be honest, but I suppose it's a space we have been asked. We do marketing as well. So we fell into it by accident, really, because I think there's a demand. A lot of agents are now bringing a marketing resource internally. So we probably placed about a dozen marketing people, right the way from interns up to, somebody a little bit more senior, depending on the size of the business. And although we never set out to do that, that sort of just happened. It was a request. We started to build a database of marketing people, and we're able to add two and two together in those circumstances. And the other area where we differ significantly, David, is on our charging model, because you can use us in one of three ways. You pay us a monthly subscription, and then the cost of getting the person in is significantly lower, but you pay that subscription whether you're looking or not. And we're constantly building talent pools in your area, so that when a vacancy comes up, we're ready to go. And that basically is £100 a month, and then the actual recruitment fees are negligible for the person, in the hundreds of pounds, not the thousands.
Not the thousands.
You can pay us traditionally in the same way that a normal recruiter would be, that you pay us a percentage of the salary, and you pay that in a lump when they join, with a rebate if they leave within certain periods. Or you can pay us monthly, and if the person leaves, you stop paying us until the bill is cleared. So the bill might be £2,500. You pay that over 9 months, but if they leave on month 3, you stop paying.
Right. Okay.
So there are three financial methods, but all of those 4 modules, the sort of consultancy, recruitment, training and development, and HR, they are completely independent of one another. You can have all of them, you can have none of them, you can have the one at the beginning and the end, you can just use recruitment. You can just use the training. You don't have to have all 4, and most people don't. They typically get involved with us in one sense, and then the relationship evolves through trust into other areas.
I think any business owner, particularly in an estate agency, if you've ever spent any amount of time advertising a job role yourself, if you put it on any of those job boards, and there's numerous, you can do it very, very cheaply. The sort of quality of candidate that you're getting to see is often extremely poor, and not really focused on our industry. So I suppose one of the key benefits of coming to people like you is that you would have already spoken to these people, checked out their background, understood whether they're a good fit for that particular business.
Yeah, less than 4% of applications reach the point where we would present them to a customer as a possible recruit. So we're putting a line through 96%. Now, some of them might then be suited, they're on our database and might be suitable for something else later on, but they wouldn't be suitable for that role. So we speak to, interview, and in most cases produce a Zoom film like this, a quick 5-minute conversation with the candidate, that if we feel they're right, we then go to that level. If we still feel they're right, then we'd send them to you, David, for example, to say, right, here's a candidate we've spoken to, we think they fit your role. We're 1.9 interviews per job offer, and I would challenge any other recruiter to even be close to that ratio.
Yeah, that's
because
hit rate.
I think, bearing in mind we try to build it from the estate agent's perspective, one of the things that bugged me was spending half a day or a day interviewing, and everyone I knew before they'd even sat down weren't even going to be, there's just no way they were going to get a
remotely suitable. Yeah.
And the cost of my time or somebody else in the business's time is greater in reality than the cost of the recruitment. Now, that's hard for some to see. I understand that, but what they could do with that day that, you know, they could go and win 2 or 3 instructions. Well, that's far greater than our costs.
The training element's very important as well, because I think a lot of estate agents make a big mistake of taking somebody new on and expecting them to learn the ropes by osmosis. And so what they'll do is they'll pick up a lot of stuff that they hear around the office. They're picking up the good stuff, but they're also picking up a lot of bad habits at the same time. And sometimes a focus on proper training and really sort of bedding these people in is going to nurture them through the business and make them stay with you for a little bit longer.
Yeah, and possibly developing to one of your leaders that is then osmosis. The osmosis then improves, because osmosis is important. But as you say, osmosis can deliver negative and positive side. Yeah. You know, soldiers watch what their generals do. That's a certainty. And if the general isn't doing it right, then the soldier will get it wrong as well. But the biggest area where we try and focus on, David, where it's all possible with our clients, is because one of the problems that we would have is that you and me could very quickly and easily put together a program to deliver a way to get a higher fee. Yeah, we've obviously got hundreds of them. Yeah, I'm sure you've got your own ideas, blah, blah, blah. But if we train somebody and then put them into an environment where the leader, the manager, or whoever it is that's responsible for on a day-to-day basis hasn't themselves bought into that process or aware of what they've been taught, largely you're wasting your money. Largely as an estate agent owner, you're wasting your money. Train yourself first. Understand what's required of you as a leader and what your people are about to be shown or given as information and advice. Make sure you are aligned to that before you buy into the trainer and the development program, and make sure that you're able to live it and breathe it yourself. Because if you are asking people to do things that either you don't understand, don't believe in, or don't know, you'll either block it. So the poor old candidate's trying to tie up an offer using a particular process, and the owner's saying, no, we don't do that around here, we do it this way. Well, that's a waste of money.
Do you think that level of self-awareness is prevalent in the industry, or, you know, where people, because you do come across people that have been doing it for a long time and they just assume that the way they've always done it, it should be the way that it's always going to be done, and they do it fairly okay, they've got through it all, so they see no reason to sort of improve on that. But there's also at the same time a big drive now for improvement. People are working on mindset. They're a little bit more open to new ideas. You feel that shifting a bit?
Look, we were talking off air earlier about this sort of, there is a really good young crop of agents coming through, building really good businesses, quite small ones in reality. That's not slight, but, you know, they clearly are the champions that you want to get their voice out there, because they do understand mentoring. They do understand that they themselves need the best tennis players in the world still have a coach. You know, the best footballers have mindset people that work with them. The best, you know, and they are the best because they're open to conversation, to analytics, to people to guide and taught them through processes. So there is a breed of people coming up. I think the Australians being very popular, you know, it's part of the culture in Australia that you have in Australia, you've got a business coach, you've got a sales coach, you've got a fitness coach, you've got a bloody, they have a coach for everything. And because they're very vogue and, come over with some very powerful ideas, and, that's starting to rub off, I think, on certain people. But of course, there are the naysayers that say, I'm going to invest in coaching, but I myself am not going to, I don't need it.
Yeah.
Of course there is. But we are very clear with our advice to those people. And we say, look, we're happy to build the program for you, but if you want the maximum return on investment, you need to be part of the process. Or certainly your leaders do. There might be a business owner that, to be fair, if it's a big business, 20 branches, they may be so far from the coalface that it's a bit irrelevant for them to be involved. But their sales directors or their area managers or their senior managers should be involved.
So that sort of deals with the business owners. From a candidate's point of view, why should they be working with Crux? What's in it for them?
On the training and development side?
In general, when a candidate comes to Crux, there are quite a few recruitment agencies out there, and some of them specifically for our industry. Crux obviously has a completely different viewpoint in terms of the ongoing support that they offer, and a more holistic approach to the whole HR corner of our industry. Surely that's got to give the candidate a little bit of, I suppose, confidence that you're not in it just for the short term.
Yeah, I mean, most of our modules are really led by the employer relationship, if I'm honest with you. You know, the consultancy won't mean that much to a candidate. The recruitment piece obviously does. The training and development does, but it's not, you know, the business might not be taking that up and they're not in control of that. The HR piece, again, same argument. So yeah, to be transparent and honest with anybody listening to this, those modules are more to do with the employer engagement, because the vacancies are the things we need to fill. I would say to any candidate, you shouldn't be working with just Crux. You know, you might think, Christ, why is he saying that? Well, because we don't have all the vacancies. I think you should pick 2 or 3 good quality people, make your judgments, look at the reviews, you know, make sure that they're not the sort of recruiter that will put your CV forward without your permission, and checking that because you've got to bear in mind, most people we speak to have a job and they're very, very nervous about their current employer finding out that they're perhaps on the look.
Yeah.
Now, you know, one question I would be asking any recruiter is, you know, if I work with you, will you need my permission? I don't want to give you my name, address, and number, and you just send it off willy-nilly to 20 people. There's some companies I would work for. There's some companies I wouldn't. I don't want this to become, because if I received your CV, Dave, and sent it out to 20 people today, it would be immediately known to the industry you were on the market. Yeah. And that's not what you've wanted me to do. That's not the engagement you've asked me to have. So I would be very, very clear, and I'd come back and say, right, David, this is what I found in the marketplace. These vacancies are actually available. These ones are more speculative, but would like to talk to you because of what you've got on your CV and what I've said about you. Which ones would you like me to present you to? Obviously, I will make sure that they are aware that this is a QT thing, but as best I can. But some just receive the CV and they literally forward it because it's a speed game for them. It's whoever can get the CV. Let's say you're the recruit, David. You must recruit people in your estate agency.
Yeah.
And a lot of recruiters, it's just a speed game. So instead of quality being delivered to David, what they want to do is get it to you quickly.
It's a real pain point, though, isn't it? It's something that we all try to get through as quickly as possible, like ripping a plaster off, because it's a pain in the arse sometimes, recruitment and the interviews you have to go through in order to get to that one candidate. And even then, there's no real guarantee that these people are going to be the right sort of people for the future. So it's one of those things that I think people do rush through.
Well, I think there's a number of things that you can. Do. One, you can obviously, as an employer, you can work with an agent that you trust to do the filtering for you. I would say that, wouldn't I? Two, you know, we will genuinely provide advice and guidance to any client, regardless of any fees ever earned, on if they're going to do it themselves, how to do it and avoid that sort of rubbish.
Yeah.
You know, job boards, frankly, 95% of the time you're wasting your time. You know, I would happily speak to any business and say, look, if you want to self-fill, when I was MD at Romans, one of my remits was to not pay recruiters anything if I could avoid it. And I absolutely believe my clients should take the same stance. However, when you can't, or when time doesn't permit, or when you're overwhelmed with volume, or it's a very specialist role, come and talk to us. But when you can self-fill, we'll show you how to do it. I'm very happy to show any agent how they can self-fill on the basis that, guys, but if it doesn't work, give us a shout. Let us show you what we can do. But yes, it's painful, but it should never be, the pain should never be subsided by putting a bum on a seat.
Yeah.
Because that pain,
that could be expensive.
And it lingers for a long time, and the pain is felt by more than the business owner or the senior figures. It's felt by the whole team, you know, even your customers. It's felt far wider than, you know, have a hole rather than an arsehole is a saying.
That's a great mantra. Ian, if I could just ask you, I know you've not come specifically to talk about this, but it interests me in general. People that are thinking of recruiting, one of the things I've heard recently, because I got together with a bunch of agents about a month ago, and we were talking about recruitment being one of the pain points. And the general comment seemed to be that don't expect to be able to pay staff what you thought you may have paid 5 years ago, that the industry's changed quite a bit to get quality personnel, really raised salaries quite a bit, and that you can expect to come into the industry at quite a decent level. Do you find that's the case?
We're definitely seeing that salaries, the basic salaries and the overall OTEs are definitely going up because there is a shortage of candidates, and therefore there's a simple supply and demand economics going on. But I also think there has been a decline in agency salaries over a long period of time as portals and other things have basically commoditized the state agency. It's become a vanilla thing.
Yeah.
Fees have been dropping, transaction numbers have been dropping. Well, okay, the obvious thing, the problem is that's just such a flawed business decision. Look, don't overpay, but pay what somebody's worth. But in general terms, if you are providing inflexible working processes, you're providing draconian rotas at weekends, you're providing the lowest basic salary, the worst OTE, expect to have the pickings of the
of those people. Yeah.
If you're a flexible boss, that you've got some good unique ideas. I saw a debate today about a 4-week in work. I think Alex Knight put something on there. It's interesting because some of our clients are starting to move in that direction now and are finding that the loss in manpower is bettered by the performance of the people that are fresh, but more importantly, the attraction and retention has gone up. So, and there's a cost of losing staff.
I suppose that's something the pandemic's taught a lot of industries, not just our own, that we can afford to be a little bit more flexible in terms of the hours that people work or where they work and how they work, and to actually leverage getting the best out of them. Sometimes just adapting to their needs enables them to be a little bit more productive.
Yeah, all of the above, David. But it's very simple. Again, if you've got a good relationship with a good recruiter that you trust, you've got to be careful that the recruiter isn't just telling you a salary so that you can get an easy fee, because that's the flip side of bad behaviour. Yeah, it's the same as an estate agent. Buy that house because it's the one that I'm getting the highest fee, or there's bad behaviour in the world. You've got to try and suss out the good from the bad, but talk to your recruiter and get sensible advice on this is the bottom end, this is the middle end, this is the top end. Now, what type of person do you want? What is the aspirations for your business? Are you a bottom end business, low fee, high churn? Well, let's be honest and go and get one of them.
Yeah.
But if you're a high fee premium estate agent, you need the premium person. Otherwise, you're going to be unaligned. There's going to be a blocker in your business.
It's not a one size fits all scenario, is it?
No, not at all, and neither are the businesses. There's nothing wrong with being a cheap, low-fee agent. If that's what you're honest about, that's what you are. There's nothing wrong with being a premium agent either. Where a lot of agents go wrong is they think they're premium, they want to charge premium, but they actually are delivering a low-cost, low-quality, low-value service, but they can't. They just think that I should be able to charge more. It's like, yeah, but okay, what are you doing for the client? Where's the differentiation between you and the agent next door? What's different about you? And if there isn't a point of difference, then fees are going to be an issue. If there is a point of difference, learn how to pitch it, learn how to promote it, learn how to use it as a closing tool, and stick fast to your fees. And certainly, high fee agents are much, much easier for us to recruit into than low fee agents. I mean, much easier. A good candidate will ask the question, well, what's your average fee?
Yeah.
Why and how long have you sustained that? And right, okay, a really good agent's going to ask that question. A really bad one is going to be asking, do you allow flexibility on your fees on listings? Well, that should be a red rag to a bull, thinking, right, this guy just wants to be. So if you're a premium agent and the guy wants flexibility on his fees, there's not a cultural fit there. Move on, get the next guy.
Yeah, no, that is important. That's very important. Ian, thank you very much for that. All of Ian's details and Crux's page are now displayed across the bottom of this page, flashing across. Ian, you got much else planned for this week?
I've got a busy. This afternoon, I am actually with my family. I've got I've got two kids that are still school age, and two that are adults. Two that are adults, obviously working. So I'm going to be spending the afternoon with. I think my wife even may have organised babysitters. So I don't know what we're doing, but we're going to spend some time
Have
together.
your kids ever expressed an interest in entering the industry?
Well, one of my sons works in Crux, and the other one is an estate agent. So the answer is yes. The two younger ones, they're too young to even be in one of them. I'd be very surprised. The other one, who knows?
And what would be the one piece of advice you'd give anybody contemplating getting into a state agency? They've never done it before. That, just like your kids, they've seen other people doing it. But what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
The one piece of advice I was given that I think has stood me in good stead in my career and helped me be reasonably successful is just be honest. With your colleagues, with your clients, just be honest, because the feeling of being dishonest is, and I got that piece of advice after being dishonest.
Okay.
And it was a friend of my father's whose house was given to us to sell, and it was way out of our normal price spectrum, and it was somebody doing my dad a favor to help his son up the ladder, and I was dishonest with that person during the process, and of course that got back to my dad, and instead of telling me off, that the conversation was around that piece. And I believe that's probably the single most important piece of advice I've ever given, because I had assumed that blag was the way forward, and it just isn't.
Yeah, very often we tend to sort of fill what we don't know with BS in this industry, and we need more honest agents.
All of that, but my BS on this particular instance was showing off. I was trying to show off, and I said something that just wasn't true. And of course, I got literally caught in that moment in front of all of my colleagues. To the point where I had to say, I literally asked the client to give me a couple of seconds, and I was out the back chucking water on my face to try and turn it from red to back to pink. But look, it was a valuable lesson. But yes, my answer would be honest. I mean, there's lots of other things that make up a good estate agent. I think empathy is a big part of being an estate agent. I think, you've got to be hustle, you've got to be able to close and everything else, but just be a human being, just be real, and work hard. The estate agency can provide a fantastic income, a brilliantly exciting, no 2 days are the same industry, which I think is the drug of estate agency, the highs, the lows, the difference. I think that's what is intoxicating about estate agency for me. But there just don't be real to yourself. Be who you're supposed to be, and go out there and do it with everything. Be present, really go for it.
And be ready to communicate. I mean, we spoke off air about sometimes people's reluctance to pick up the phone and to get involved. The hard work of a state agency is talking to people, is communicating and giving them honest advice.
Good news and bad news. Don't shirk your responsibilities. I think it's an absolutely fabulous industry, particularly if, like me, you didn't necessarily come out of the education system with an awful lot of things behind you from that perspective. You can still earn an exceptionally good income in a very varied, exciting, fast-paced, fun job, but you've got to pick your employer well. You've got to be coachable. No one's born knowing everything, and no one dies knowing everything. So along the way, you've got to be coached a lot. Whether that's osmosis, whether it's a specific course, whether it's just hearing it, whether it's, there's a billion and one things that will build a thing. But I think it's a fabulous industry for someone to get into. Maybe it's lost a bit of its polish, but I do think it's a fabulous industry, and it probably stands on the steps of change right now that can either see it become a mediocre administrative job, or it could actually find its way again and become the industry that I loved 10, 20 years ago.
Well, if people like you and I have got anything to do with it, we're going to be pushing it in the other direction. And Phil, there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful right now about the direction this industry is capable of going in. And let's keep pushing.
Yep, keep positive change.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, David. Thank you.